Namaste. Here we are again. Let's see what is coming up today. Just take a moment and feel sort of the quality of your being right now, which means tune in, become still, and mentally scan through the body. See what energies there are in the body, the quality of your mind, if it's running, if it's busy with stuff from the day. And just sort of take a readout. It's all okay, you don't have to change anything. The desire to change things can really get in the way. So just observe it, and then observe what happens when you observe it. And you may notice how that awareness turned inward has an effect. Probably a calming effect, but sometimes it can also be apparently more aggravating because you're suddenly becoming aware of an aggravation or a unsettled energy inside of you. So just be aware of yourself and let yourself sink into this moment. Feel the weight of your body as it's pressing down onto the seat. It's always a wonderful way to come into presence. And give the mind something to play with. Give it a toy, like the breath. And just notice the breath coming and going. And these very small things that you're doing here with your awareness have an effect, which is cumulative over time. And if you feel settled in enough, then you can bring your attention to the Hridayam, the innermost core of your being, the spiritual heart. And you may not be able to perceive it or feel it. So you can just imagine a point of light there in the very center of your chest. And breathe in and out of that point of light. Settle into that. And then notice the rhythm of the breath as it flows through that Hridayam, that heart core of your being. And allow that sensation or that perception of the heart to pulsate with the breath. It expands, gets bigger when you inhale, and it settles down into its own completely relaxed state with each exhale. And slowly, as your attention deepens, as your focus becomes clear, that inner presence, that sun in the heart becomes larger and larger with each breath, each inhalation. And you notice that there is no necessity to receive love from the outside, because it's all in here. And so you can become free of wanting and needing love and attention and acknowledgement, as you simply step into the heart, rest in that presence. Let it radiate into your whole being and from you into your world. And you may notice that love is not about taking, about getting. It's about having and giving. Having is just what it is, but giving enriches us. The receiving is in the giving. So let it fill you completely. It's okay if there are thoughts still coming in and going out. Just let them happen, but don't pay that much attention. Bring your attention into the heart cave. And although you may forget it at times, nothing and no one can take from you that inner source. It is the true core of your being. And whenever something bothers you, that's where you can go. Because in that place of the heart, you're never bothered. it just never penetrates that deep. It cannot. You can forget it, you can ignore it for lifetimes, but it's always there, whether you're in a body or not. It's always there for you. You can have emotional armoring 3 miles thick, and you can step into the heart, and that armoring cannot imprison you because the freedom you seek is in here. And just notice the sense of comfort. Nothing happened except you felt yourself. And this you can take deeper, deeper, and deeper until you are in a place of peace so stable, so complete, that from that place you look up to the surface of life, like from the depth of the ocean. And you see the waves of the ups and downs of life, with a great sense of humor and levity. The drama of it all, the agony and the ecstasy. And it just cannot touch you in that place of stable bliss and unchanging peace. So let's take a deep breath together. Exhale. Inhale again. Relax.
Hi, this is Gloria Gonzalez.
I guess the phone wasn't off the hook. So, beats being aggravated, huh? You know, it's like, isn't it that we have been raised with this idea that we have to be aggravated in order to handle life better? Push harder, be tighter, protect ourselves, go for it. In that place, you see that it all comes. It all comes. It's like a world of complete abundance, and it's always been that, we just haven't noticed. And Katie says, if there's something that you absolutely want, you want it with every fiber of your being, you think you can't live without it, you really, really, really want it, and then you can't have it. It's time to get really excited because something even better has got to take its place. And that's a cosmic law. But of course, the point is we miss it because we're looking for what we thought we wanted, which is like grade B. You know, so we miss grade A because our imagination isn't even smart enough to imagine reality as it is. Now, when we run that past our past experiences in our interpretation of, so you may be able to see it, but it's still, you know, we still see habits of aggravation and desires and fears and all of that. You know, that's really the stuff that we're here for, to work on. And of course, you know, when we sit together like this and we have moments like this, and I see all your heads nodding, we understand that, but we may certainly not be there all the time, right? And that's okay. I mean, we're all in training. We got training wheels on, you know, that's the satsang. And, you know, so we screw up constantly, and that's fantastic, because how else will we learn? And not only do we screw up, then we torture ourselves about it. Oh, I'm just never be good enough. So it's all a matter of seeing through it. You know. When you look fear in the face, the thing you're most afraid of, when you look it straight in the face, that's where you see your path. It leads right through that into freedom. But as long as we're trying to run the other way, that fear is always right snapping at our heels, right there. You can't get away from it that way. And there's a time for that facing of fear. You know, it's like you can't force it, because that would be just being violent with yourself again. But it comes. We're just sort of gradually moving into a different maturity. And while we're waiting for that maturity to manifest. Just do whatever feels loving to do. And of course, loving is not indulging. That we need to be clear, you know. Loving sometimes is to do the tough thing, difficult thing. But you do it out of love, not out of some kind of neurotic, I gotta be the super yogi or some nonsense like that. You know? The yogi, who is a yogi? A yogi is the person who comes to know that they are love. Love without boundaries, love without needing anything. And in that love, the awareness that this world is a dream is contained. Because you can't really have it without it. You can't think that this is all real, because then there's always fear. Because you're this being, this ego in a bag of skin that needs to defend itself. So that cannot be love. Love means you have to see the emptiness of it all, but that's only the beginning. So we are in this, we each dream this dream of a world. And can you love it fully yet? You know, find the places where you can't love yet. That's where the work is. And you know, it could be just the little shit that aggravates us. You know, the guy that drives wrong on the street. Can you believe it? And you know, those little things, especially like in marriages, great field of action there. You know, it's like you do this crazy thing to let that other people into your heart, to let them come so close. So of course they're going to push your buttons. That's their job. And without them, you wouldn't know all the places where you're still stuck. So, you know, we have to understand how good that is. And then hopefully, when there's two people together, one of them will learn not to react in the usual way all the time. But even if you can find sort of the smallest way of, you know, it's like you're in the middle of reacting. And there's still this awareness that says, I'm reacting, aren't I? Right? So that can be there. And then there's the temptation to do it anyway, right? But maybe you just get a little tired of it. So when you can, in the middle of a reaction, you can say something, oh, I'm reacting. You actually verbalize it out to your partner or your child or whoever it is, you know? You're doing that for yourself. It has a wonderful effect of like stimulating this awareness in both of you. So, any questions, anything whatsoever? Where are we going to take this show here? It's up to you. It's up to you. Very.
At a crossroad in life with one of my children, where we've been nurturing, and now it's time to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it's time to let go, but you're still trying to decide what's right and wrong, and they're deciding what's right and wrong for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting yin and yang moment. Trying to figure out, or not figure out, but have the ability to just let it go and let the person find life for themselves.
It's really important with children to know that our job as parents is just to let go, let go, let go, let go. That's the business, right? People think they're going to have a child when they're new at it, right? I'll forget it. You're going to let go of a child at each stage of their growth, you know? And you know what's right or wrong in your actions because you already know. So it's a matter of just remembering that you don't have to figure it out. Get a sense of the situation. Ask a simple question, should I do this? Yes or no? And there's already a yes or no here. And the key is to become still, right? So when the mind is just churning because of attachments, then you can't tune in here most likely, you know? But just do your best, and then sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. And ultimately, there's no way you can do it wrong. Because when you do it wrong, that's the path for all of you to take. And that is the way the path is meant to be. Why? Because it's happening like that. So we can cut out that sort of huge load of thoughts that it should have been different, or I should have known, and you know, all of that stuff. It's just any regrets of the past are just, well, if you need a hobby, keep it up. But don't confuse it with reality. You know, it's just like what happened in the past had to happen in the past, because if we would have known better, we would have done it different. But we couldn't know better because we didn't know better. And to say that you should have known better is just absolute fantasy that has absolutely no reality whatsoever and just carries a lot of pain with it. So know that you're doing this perfectly with her, this letting go business, you know, perfectly, imperfectly. And, you know, love yourself and it'll show. And they may not notice for a long time, because when they're in that age bracket, I have a daughter right now in that age bracket, right? Well, she's just out there figuring herself out, and there's not much room for me in that. And that's how it ought to be. And at one point, they've got it figured out, and then it gets close again. But it's also good medicine for us to let go of our attachments and to find our own life again, because rearing a child is like a huge trip for 20 years. And we tend to grow a lot from it. And obviously there are teachers, but we also tend to lose ourselves in it, right? So then that time when they move out of the house, it's like a great time to like reconnect. And you, of course, can reconnect in a much deeper place than ever before, because you've more matured. So go for it. Mm-hmm.
I'm still having confusion about like the karma yoga or the serving others lifestyle, which I know it's life is about serving others, but kind of getting into a people.
Life is about serving yourself.
Okay, so
that's why you want to serve others, because it feels good.
What if you're doing things to serve others that you know will make them happy, but it contradicts what you know is right for yourself?
Don't do it. But you have to look deeply, you know, it's like when that what's right for myself comes from an ego, mm-hmm. then it's actually not true. And to see through that is important. There's a lot of people who love to do good, you know, they're do-gooders in this world. And on one level, they're fantastic. I mean, they really just create a fabric of life that is missing in so many ways. And yet it could be so much better if they could give to themselves first and then give out of that fullness. Because when you give out of emptiness, you're actually not giving, because it's like, here, you know, I give, but I want back. I want acknowledgement, I want love, I want appreciation.
Or there's resentment with the egg because it's.
Exactly. Yeah, well, then that's poison right there,
Yeah.
right? So come to your own peace, and out of that, the giving will become very natural. And the way you come into your own peace is also by giving. So figure it out. There's a great exercise that was really hard for me at first, to do something for someone else without them noticing, and do something like that 3 times a day at least. But if somebody notices what you're doing, you have to start from scratch. It all doesn't count, right? So it's that important thing to really get out of the seeking love and acknowledgement part, right? So you do something and you make sure they don't notice, and then you get to feel what that feels like. And after just a very short while, you probably want to do stuff for other people all the time. I mean, picking up right down the street, there's a Benadryl tube lying on the side of the road, right? It's a pretty clean neighborhood, but this was sort of just looking at me. And I walked past it twice and didn't do anything about it. Then I picked it up and put it away. And it's just, I mean, it's a tiny little thing, you know, but it's just like, of course.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if I get smarter, I'd do it the first time. But, you know, it's just, when you are a giving person, you are fulfilled. And you become a giving person by giving. It has nothing to do with anyone else.
What do you do with the guilt that may be associated, or the disappointment that may be associated with like doing what you know is right for you, but not perhaps pleasing, you know, those people in your life that you want to be there and serve? You know, when you start really putting yourself.
Well, where does the guilt come from? And I don't mean psychology now, I don't mean history.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where does it come from? What creates it?
The thoughts.
Thoughts, right?
Yeah.
You know, what do you do with thoughts? Stressful thoughts?
Turn them around.
No, you question them.
Question.
Right?
Yeah.
You do the whole package.
Right.
So you find what is the thought that's really creating this guilt here, right? And it's always really good to collect your thoughts along the lines of the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, because it's got all these different questions. I want, I need, they should, I should, you know, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get that right, you know, what is really bothering you, then you can investigate and you get the turnarounds that work the best usually. It's just a fantastic tool. You know, why not use it? And it's the thoughts that create the guilt in that case, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
there is a question.
Yeah.
Linda.
Who?
Linda asks, "Hi Ramgiri, while listening to your lovely meditation CD with the chanting, a lot of grief got triggered. I wept throughout most of it. Do you recommend when grief arises during heart sourcing to apply open attention or just keep with the heart sourcing? Thank you."
Great question, Linda. It's really not separate. I teach these two approaches separately because that way it's more clear in the mind, but they completely flow together and become one. It's like you have a stressful emotion, like guilt or shame, or what was it, grief?
Grief.
Or fear, could be anything, right? You find it in the body, and when you're in that place of weeping, you can probably sense it or just let it flow when you're in that place. So just feel what's going on. Become present with that. Open up, pay attention. Opening up and paying attention to this part of you that needs help, that's the basic building block of love. You cannot love without opening and without paying attention. This outer love as well as the inner love. So you're right there doing open attention and doing heart sourcing in the same way. You know, these are two flows of attention. One goes directly into the heart, one goes into the emotion and brings that love into the emotion. So it's just one flow, and I love that this meditation on the CD is working for you. We've had lately just a lot of feedback of people in very critical situations, very painful situations, illness and all kinds of things, using this meditation and how it just allows them to go back and back into the heart. Now, when you're going into the heart like that, that upwelling of grief or whatever the hell it is that we've packaged away for years, is really love itself coming to you. Because this grief or whatever obstruction there is, these are the obstructions that don't allow us to live in the heart all the time. So understand that this grieving itself is love, because you're shedding it. With painful stuff, old experiences, like let's say a trauma or something, what happens is that at one point when we were younger, the experience happened, and like let's say it's abuse, the abuse happened to you, and then the pain of it and the fear of it was generated. So in other words, it started to be your reality for that moment. And then we didn't know what to do with it because it was too much. So we pushed it down. We buried some of it. And then often years can go by until your being has the strength and the clarity to be able to get free of it. And then suddenly it comes up again. Now, it feels the same way when that grief comes out. It feels like you're back in that grief that happened in the past. But you have to remember that you're not dealing with the same situation now. You're dealing with the memory. You survived the situation. You survived the abuse, the whatever it was. Does it stand to reason that you will survive dealing with the memory? Of course. And it can come up now because you're stronger. You're ready for it. Your heart wants to be known, wants to be free. And so it kind of flushes it out. Just welcome it. And know it to be a symptom of love when that comes up. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read a note that Rose sent in. And this is the same process, although she's dealing not with grief, but with something else. And she writes, "This week has been full with meeting an aspect of myself that has been so deeply protected and armored. My little one whose no was denied, disrespected. The one who was punished and shamed for her no's has shown up." Now, this is pretty mature work. This is not a regression back to a childhood state. That's the awakening heart flushing out what is no longer needed or what is really now ready to be freed. My body experience is like concrete breaking up in my face, neck, head, and shoulders, also over my kidneys, shoulders, and back. It is surreal to feel and hear the fascia cracking. This is somebody who's very attuned to her body. She is revealing unmet rage and fear. Many stories are flashing on the screen. Forced to eat food I was averse to. Take medicine, have surgery for tonsils and adenoids. Go under sedation for surgery. Dental treatments that included extractions. These are the big stories there. There are also not so big things. Many flip outs, meltdowns, and tantrums involving body violations and my will. This body is really getting unwrapped. Orienting to the defendedness was the I should read this different. This body is really getting unwrapped. Orienting to the defendedness was the fulcrum of my reality. See, this is the armoring. We all have, packed all kinds of armoring so we'll be safe. But that's based on experiencing yourself as an ego in a bag of skin. And that's no longer fully your reality. We're still, we're in between that and an awareness that we're something very different, that we are that love inside of us that can radiate out effortlessly and dissolve all the boundaries, all the limitations, all the fears, all the desires for little stuff. And everything is little when you compare it with the freedom of your soul, the love in your heart. Everything is little. What a ride, she says, sighing into vulnerability, experiencing a deep alchemy in my nervous system, Ram, and love. And she says, please speak to vulnerability, surrender, and don't worry about a thing. As it relates to the mundane, it feels to be a portal through which grace permeates the mundane. Absolutely. So whether it's grief or whether it's defendedness or fear or whatever, let it come up. Last week we talked about the important psychological principle of weird shit. Weird shit happens to us. So stuff comes up, body things like an illness may pass through. I've had lately these body things, all kinds of quirky things that are sort of coming unglued. And this is like the way my body has held itself together forever, it seems. And it's coming unglued. And I'm going to the chiropractor because it has to be sort of rearranged. And it just takes a while. And then it rearranges itself in a freer mode, a mode that's not, got to keep it all together. Life is dangerous, life sucks and then you die. That's the motto, right? So we've learned to live like that, right? And it's just no longer needed. It's just no longer needed. So all this stuff just flushes out, just let it come. And remember this image because it really can become an experience, that image of where all the stuff happened in our lives, where all the pain that we've accumulated and are still accumulating often happens is because life is up and then it's down and it's up and down, pleasure and pain, and we're always involved in the pleasure and pain cycle. We're running for the pleasure, running away from the pain, and it's like we can't get anywhere that way. And this is how the world spends its time, most of it, right? So think of the ocean, right? Waves, always up and down. It's just the nature of things. It happens for everyone, even enlightened people. It has ups and downs. It's like up and down, up and down, up and down. That's the life of the person. But you are not that person. You are this consciousness that's the entire ocean. And you can watch this process of up and down from way down in your heart, in the bottom of the ocean. In that peace that does not change because it's unconcerned with the ups and downs, right? So ups and downs, there's tears and there's, body armoring breaking up, and, all that kind of stuff. Isn't it amazing to watch? Amazing to watch. And it's all love. It's all love. It may not feel like it. If you're really having some really painful grief come out, of course, the pain is real. But you're not the pain. You're that in which the pain can release itself. You're that freedom. There's no need to hold on a little more tight. Hope it makes sense what I'm saying, Linda.
We were talking today about practice and how practice is that invitation to walk through that door that comes in front of us. And we were talking about the idea of when we're able to see the goal, that peak of the mountain, the highest one. And therefore, we know that to get there, we need to go down to the valley and up to the mountain again, and just continue that process. And how practice will take us there, as opposed to that idea that most of us have of having that kind of striking heat lightning of awakening that we all seek, right?
Oh, the magic, the silver bullet.
The silver
the
bullet,
silver bullet
the pill.
approach to enlightenment.
So we're talking in regards to people who get medicated constantly because they don't know there is another way, right? So can you expand on that, what we were talking on?
You're using a different image now with the, going to the mountaintop. But let me stay with the one with the ocean, because we can take the same thing with that, right? So maybe you've had a glimpse of a state of real peace, a state of being in love, a state of just being really present. That's the awareness of the heart. That's being in the core of the ocean where there is no ups and downs. And then, of course, we lose it again and we get caught in the ups and downs of the waves on the surface, right? So practice is to undo our attachments to being the person who is going through the ups and downs, the drama of life. It feels so good to feel so bad. So that's where we have attachments, and to loosen these attachments, to see the attachments as attachments and no longer as reality. That's why we practice, and that practice is really important because it releases us then to be just where we are naturally ourselves, which is in that place of peace in the heart, right? So you cannot, and there's no point of practicing what you truly are, because you already are that peace, that love, right? The practice is for releasing that which we are not, and these are what we call obstructions, And there's basically 3 levels of that. There is the grossest level, which is negative emotions. And the negative emotions are just something that we're just suckers for, because we have this pain body we're used to having a certain amount of pain. And the ego does not just want to let go of that, of being who it knew itself to be, right? So we recreate it, and we need to just work with that, both on that level itself and on the next subtler level, which are specific stressful thoughts. So like in your case with guilt, just sit with that and ask yourself, what am I guilty about? I'm guilty about blah, 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 because, and become still and let it come to you. You know, I shouldn't have blah, 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 right? The blank, fill in the blank, right? Let that come to you and then question those thoughts. And the work of Byron Katie is really powerful there. I had 30 years of meditation practice when I found the work, and it's just like, I saw that there were so many ways of describing the world that I thought was absolutely blind to. In other words, that's the way it is, right? And they were very stressful thoughts. But they described my reality, and I'm not crazy. I'm like everyone else, right? So we all have these ways of describing reality in ways that are stressful to us. If we question them, they cannot survive because we see a deeper truth. And that really accelerated my meditative practice, everything about my spiritual life tremendously. So that's why this has just a stable practice in a stable place in the practices that we do. And then the most subtle layer of mind, so we have negative emotions, stressful thoughts, and then the most subtle layer is that sense where we experience ourselves as this person, this body, this ego. And as soon as you identify yourself as a separate person, a separate being, there has to be stress, because now you have something can be attacked, something can be lost, something needs to be taken care of, something is not safe. You know, so there is a subtle layer of tension and aggravation that's always there, and it's not really due to specific stressful thoughts as much as the thought of I, you know, I am this, I am that. So that layer we dissolve, we can get clear on through real deep stillness of just being still, seeing it, seeing through it, right? So these are the three layers of mind that we have to work with. If we work with them, our behaviors will change, our relationships will improve, our livelihood will become easier, everything will change. But the mind is the most important instrument with which we live in this world. So that needs to be worked with, that needs to be trained. And as we train it, then the higher mind, what we talked about, that intuition that's already in all of us, right? It becomes not only a moments where we can kind of get in touch with it, but it becomes a flow. It becomes like we start to live in it, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next more subtle layer is that love that we are. And the more you realize that, the less the ego runs the show. Because there's still an ego, you know, even as the one who loves, you are still somebody, you're still somebody, right? But I wouldn't really say you're separate, because that love is all encompassing, and it gets to a point where there's nothing you don't love. You love the walls, as Ramdas says, you know. You're in love with everything, with this each breath is just amazing, you know. And when that ego becomes so subtle, so sattvic, it doesn't stand in the way of things anymore. It's a gift, and it's a gift that allows us to live in this body and to share that inner essence, because what's good about that? The moment we share it, we got more of. That's the rule. That's the nature of love. The more you give it away, the more you get. So, you know, there's nothing other than reason for gratitude. And that is not a flimsy way of life. because you find that in the deepest and darkest places. That's where it becomes real. Like I said, when you look your deepest fear straight in the eye, that's where you see the path. And the path, of course, is to your heart. For me, I found that in Auschwitz. So, if I can't find it there, I think we can find it in whatever else we're dealing with. There's no place where love is not. There's no darkness where light is not. But when we are overwhelmed, when our perception is overwhelmed by the darkness, we have to make an effort to look for the light. That's, coming into the heart again and again and again, training your awareness to live here increasingly, constantly. And then you see what's pulling you out of there. The thoughts, the emotional habits, the, ego identification. And you work on that. That's the practice, right? So practice is important to get free of what we are not. When we are in the place where we are who we are, there's no practice. Then, to clinging to practice becomes a distraction. It's like, up and down. When you're up here, there's no need for practice. But when it goes down, then it's really good to have a few tricks up your sleeve to clear the mind.
And I've heard, and I have experienced even that practice, a consistent practice, even if the moments are not so hard, even if we don't need it in that day or that moment, is a preparation for when the rough times come.
So the consistency of practice saves you an enormous amount of future suffering. And it's the consistency. It's like when we have these ups and downs, so you're up and everything's just great and hunky-dory. And then, time moves on and you go down. It's like in the roller coaster, and that moment it goes down, you forget everything. You forget you ever had a spiritual thought in your life because you're like in panic mode, and that can be subtle or it can be really big. But if you have your practice established every day, certain time of day, this meditation happens or whatever you do, right? It catches you right there. You don't go into free fall. That's why practice has to be like brushing your teeth. You don't have to argue with yourself, oh, am I going to do it today or not? It's like you feel kind of yucky when you don't. And, not yucky like in an existential way, but just like you're just used to it, right? I mean, there's these great beings like Nisargadatta, who's like totally Mr. Non-dual mind. And what did he do every day? He took out his arti lamp and his incense and he worshipped his guru. And he lived in the place where he was the guru. There's no difference. But he loved that devotion. It's not in the books about him so much. He loved that devotion. And there was kirtan in the place, and all that fullness of the heart was there. And then he'd sit with people, and he'd become Mr. Non-dual mind, right? So there was no need for him to do the devotional practice, like the waving of the incense sticks. There was definitely no need for it. But there was just a love of it. And so he just kept it up until he left this form. So the practice is something to love, Practice. I have to do my spiritual practice. It's 7:30. My meditation time is coming. Let's get serious. Just love it. because it sets you free. And if you love yourself, then you will love that. And if you don't love yourself yet, then do it anyway, because it'll take you there.
Mm.
And there's another thing, it's like we're in a certain evolutionary state. It's like we're in a reality, a dimension of reality that you can picture like a room. So we're in a room this big, right? And at one point we were in a much smaller room, remember? When it was like your being was more tight, more fear-filled, right? And then something happened and you found the doorway between that smaller room and the room you're in now, right? And you went through a rite of passage in some way, and you died to that old reality, you were reborn in this greater reality. Well, fantastic. Now there's some stages we go through. At first, we're just having a time of our lives. This is like a bigger reality where there's more happiness, there's more love here, there's more freedom here, right? And we're like a pig in shit, and we're exploring this whole thing and just having a great time, right? And then after a while, because we're growing, even that larger room becomes a little tight. It's like, yeah, I've been there, done that. So what else is new, right? So you start searching again. And then a little while later, suddenly it gets like claustrophobic, like I got to get the hell out of here. And then you may realize, at first you don't realize that there's an exit, but you realize, oh, there's another door on the other side. And you start leaning against that door, and you want to get through that door, right? So that's an internal intent to grow, an aspiration for true enlightenment at all costs. You got to get through that door. Life or death, you don't care. You got to get through that door. And then when you're ready, that door is opened from the other side, which is you. And then suddenly you're in a much bigger room. And now in each, there's room after room after room until you get out into the open air, and there's no longer a room. But in each room, you can spend a great deal of time just having a great time in that new dimension, Or you can rely on the guru, which is the part of you that wants to be absolutely free and is not content with playing around on some astral or causal field or another, but just is determined to get free. And then what happens is you get into that new space and you say, well, this is great here. Where's the next door? And you head for the door, and you may not be ready for a while to get to that door, but you start leaning on it. That's practice. And you start to mature yourself to be not someone who evolves through the passage of time, which can be very slow. Like going from the amoeba to the frog took us a long time. And we are now in a different phase. We're in a phase where consciousness is aware of itself, and it can seek that next door and lean on that door with all you've got. And this is not neurotic. That is aspiration for enlightenment. And then, of course, because you're not busy creating new desires and stuff in this new world, this new dimension, no, you have one desire. And that absorbs all your other desires. And so that door will open much sooner for you until there's no longer a door. So that is the guru in you. That awareness that says, no, it's not enough. when your mind wants something else? Why would we be content with stuff or experiences, no matter how sublime, if they still pass away? They come and they go. They're the ups and the downs. And they can be really great ups, and we have such a fantastic spiritual ego. This is the golden chain. You cut that golden chain too, because it is still a chain. And we're all destined for that freedom. I mean, we have no place else to go. It's just a question of how much time are we going to spend in suffering? Because the further you are, the smaller your room is, the more suffering there is. And it's that door opening, that experience of emerging into the new state, that is very blissful. But the passage itself, there's struggle, there's pushing, there's fighting. This is the symbol of, we go through it as physical beings because this is a universal pattern, right? What I just described are the stages of birth. Your life force was injected into this little egg and sperm thing there that merged. And then it grew and everything was like hunky-dory in that new dimension. Everything was great. You were floating around in the amniotic fluid like in an ocean of bliss. And then at one point, the growth was fulfilled and the space became too small. And then some really scary shit starts happening. Like the waves, the walls of your reality start caving in. That's the beginning of labor. Imagine yourself to be the baby. The walls of your world start caving in. This is when you're in that room and it's like, I got to get out of here. And you don't know where the exit is because the birth canal has not opened yet into the next stage. And so there's tremendous pressure. There's certain psychological problems that people develop or can develop there, right? There's tremendous pressure and no way out. So that's kind of the scariest part. But then you see the door, the birth canal opens. And you struggle through that. Now, that's really the metaphor of physical birth. There's a struggle. There's blood and guts involved in this. And there's, that is reflected in the physical, on the physical plane. Spiritually, it doesn't have to be that much struggle. And why? Because you have your practice. Because what holds you in that old state, but your habitual sense of ego, your stressful thoughts, and your negative emotions. So you just keep working away at them every day. And when you get to that door, there isn't that much baggage. It's not that hard to struggle through that. You're being released into that greater way of being that you are. And then once you're through, there's, the new life. It's like the baby has been born. So we give birth to ourselves all the time like that. It's very powerful when you work with psychedelic drugs, which we did a long time ago. Ramdas and Ralph Metzner and probably Tim Leary, I'm not sure who, they wrote a book back when in the 60s about the psychedelic experience as a rite of death and rebirth. And it really is like that. But we don't need to take psychedelic substances for that because we experience it in our regular life if our aspiration is strong. And we're being taken through these experiences. It's like a part of us dies off. This this grief that you mentioned, Lisa. You know, it's like a part of you that comes, and it may feel absolutely awful, but you just understand. This is open attention now, basics. You understand it's not a threat or an enemy that you have to defend against or, you know, do the old strategies with. No, it's a part of you that needs help. So compassion is appropriate. Loving it, bringing awareness to it is appropriate. So that's a part of us that's in the process of dying off. Fantastic. And then when that is sort of, when we're coming to the place where it just naturally leaves us, we emerge into the next greater dimension of being. And yeah, these cycles can be such that sometimes the burning is really intense when you have an intense aspiration. It's like you have all of this old attachments and fears and crap stuck to you, and it's just burning off, like Rose writes about that. You know, the cracking of the old armoring can be very intense. Fantastic. And kind of what separates the men from the boys, to the girls from the women from the girls, I guess. To embrace that and allow it to happen. And to say yes, 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 even when something inside of you screams, no, no, no. And then you pass through that passage of birth, and you'll notice suddenly, you're in this bigger space. And I remember many times for years going through these kind of cycles, and the minute I'm like in a new space, even though when I'm going through it, I'm going like, I never want this happen again to me. This is just awful. I hate it. I just got to be a better way. I just right? Then the minute you're through, you're going, okay, this is wonderful. Okay, I'll do it again. I'm ready. Because there's nothing like freedom. Nothing. And it's an internal state, just like imprisonment is an internal state. Okay, do we have anything else online here? No? Okay. So we have an announcement to make, and I think
Wait, give me a moment. Yeah, let me type something.
You want to type something?
Yeah.
Okay. No idea what she's doing.
It's typing your words of wisdom.
I don't know. I don't know whose words they are. Am I supposed to wait for you?
And I think we should do it in here, not live.
No, it's important for anyone who lives in the Miami area. That's why I want to say it, right? So if you're living in the Miami area, we have an announcement that you also need to know. We have been invited by K.K. Shah, who some of you met. He's a very close devotee of Maharaji, of my guru. And he has invited us to live with him for a year in India. And so that's the plan. Durga, he's going to teach Durga devotional singing. Some people are having heart attacks here. Don't worry, we'll still be available. We won't be here physically, but you know, everybody's having a good time tuning in by electronic means. We're going to keep it up. So we're just not going to be here physically. And we just wanted to let you know, this is not happening until probably September or October, we assume. And it's just a real grace. I just feel this is coming straight from Maharaji, and he's calling us back there to the next bigger room.
Right.
I'm ready. Been leaning on that door for a while.
Me too.
And and you never know. That's the wonderful thing. You never know what the new space is going to be, because you can't. You're in your little world. You're in your little dimension. You cannot fathom the next dimension. It's like our imagination isn't sharp enough to go there, right? We just know it's going to be more love and more peace, right? Because that's the experience we've been having, right? But what really it is, I don't know. This is an area up there in the Himalayas where we're going to stay, where all the great sages lived for thousands of years. And in fact, many of the contemporary ones used to go in and out of KK's house. There's a room upstairs where they used to spend nights when they passed through town. His parents were these great devotees, and they would stay in the house. And these incredible beings, these siddhas, that some of which are very known. Maharaji is probably the most known, and he's sort of the greatest one for us. But there were quite a few of them who, some of them don't care to be known much, you know. They're just known locally. And we're going to live in that same house, and just cannot not do that. It's just very clear. Right?
Just let them know that the satsang will continue to happen.
Yeah, so the satsang will continue to happen. And as a matter of fact, I want to make an announcement, another one. We're going to add something. We're going to add another maybe weekly or bi-weekly session where I'm going to be available to anyone who wants to tune in. This is not going to be at a satsang here, so it's just going to be online. We're going to do a Google Plus meeting where some of you can request, and please let us know if you're interested in that, and request to be sort of a regular guest. I think there's several slots to have regular guests, and we're going to have a conversation here, but people can type in questions. And you know, I'm just basically making myself available for free, because I cannot stand that I'm always only available for a fee. So, you know, on one sense, we have to do it that way because that's part of our culture. But I just want to be more available, and you know that this is enriching for all of us. It's enriching for me as much as anything you might experience. So please take advantage of that. We will send it out in a newsletter and let you know. Now that I said it, we have to finally do it. Planned that for a while. And please tune in and let's have a wonderful time. Let's get together and really go into depth about the skills and really get the applications down, what you need in your life to shed what you don't need and get through those next doors and the next one and the next one. So, you know, to save ourselves future suffering. Doesn't that sound like a good idea? Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you for showing up. That's all we can do. And if we do it, we're on. Namaste.
Namaste.
Much love. Much love.
Mm-hmm.